When was the last time Germany openly told Israel to stop, publicly and without softening its words? That moment is now, as Germany draws a very visible red line over Israel's plan to build thousands of new homes in West Bank settlements. On Friday, Germany said it firmly rejects the Israeli government's announcements regarding the approval of thousands of new housing units in Israeli settlements in the West Bank. This statement is blunt, direct, and impossible to ignore. The German Foreign Ministry added that these settlements would not only violate international law, but could also bury the very idea of a Palestinian state, echoing the words of Israel's own finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, whose office declared the plan would do exactly that. Why is this moment different? Germany has long been a close ally of Israel, often cautious in criticism. Now, Berlin is warning that approving these settlements threatens peace prospects, splits the West Bank in two, and cuts Palestinians off from East Jerusalem. If these warnings fall on deaf ears, the result could be a deeper diplomatic rift, more instability in the region, and a weakening of the very international laws that hold nations accountable. So why is Germany so alarmed now? And what exactly is in this controversial settlement plan? To make sense of this crisis, we need to understand both the history behind these settlements and the details of the plan that pushed Germany to speak out. Before we go further, ask yourself, why do Israeli settlements in the West Bank trigger such fierce global reactions? And what could happen if they continue unchecked? Knowing the answer is crucial, because misunderstanding this issue could mean missing how the future of peace, law, and even European credibility are on the line. The West Bank sits at the epicenter of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a struggle that has shaped the fate of millions for over 5 decades. Since the late 1960s, Israel has established settlements, communities of Israeli citizens across this territory, which almost all of the international community, including the United Nations, classifies as occupied land. These settlements now house several 100,000 Israelis, yet are widely viewed as illegal under international law and by UN Security Council resolutions. But why did these settlements cause such a storm? Here's the microhook. Every new settlement is not just a cluster of homes. It's a lever that shifts the region's demographics, carves up land, and redraws the future map. The stakes? With each expansion, the contiguous territory Palestinians hope to claim for their own state is chipped away, threatening to make a two-state solution impossible. The E1 project. This plan would add thousands of homes, extending the settlement of Ma'ale Adumim deep into the West Bank. If realized, it would slice the West Bank in half, severing it from East Jerusalem and boxing in Palestinian communities. For Palestinians, this means losing freedom of movement, political viability, and even hope for statehood. For Israelis, it's about security and permanence, but at a tremendous diplomatic cost. Deutschland, wielding significant influence within Europe und als ein standhafter Bäcker der Zwei-Staaten-Vision, hat repetiert stark die Alarm. Der deutschen Foreign-Ministeriums-Message ist blunt. Der deutsche GKV calls on the israelische government to halt settlement construction und wird nur Borderänderungen von June 14, 1967, wenn beide Parteien agreeen. Der Warnung macht die Konsequenzen explizit. Ungecheckte Settlement Expansion nicht nur devastiert palästinensische Aspirationen, sondern auch erot den währenden Fundament für negotierte Peace. What's truly at stake? Oversimplifying or ignoring this context risks reducing a deeply complex crisis to slogans, blinding us to the far-reaching impacts on regional stability and the international legal order. As a German official put it, plans for the E1 settlement and the expansion of Ma'ale Adumim would further restrict the mobility of the Palestinian population in the West Bank by splitting it in half and cutting the area off from East Jerusalem. So why is Germany ramping up its intervention now? The answer is immediate and concrete. The new Israeli government's aggressive push for rapid settlement growth threatens, in the words of both UN and German officials, to bury any remaining hope for a Palestinian state, possibly forever. This is not just another diplomatic scuffle. The strength of Germany's reaction signals that Europe's leverage, and perhaps the whole international framework for resolving this conflict, could be at a breaking point. But what exactly is the E1 project, and why has it become such a lightning rod for controversy? Let's break down the details and see how it could reshape the entire West Bank. What if a single construction project could redraw the map and crush decades of hope for Middle East peace? That's exactly what's at stake with Israel's controversial new settlement plan, which has triggered an urgent outcry across Europe, and especially in Berlin. The flashpoint is a high-stakes announcement from Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich. He has authorized a sweeping initiative to build thousands of new homes for Israeli settlers in the E1 corridor, a narrow stretch between Jerusalem and the existing settlement of Ma'ale Adumim. This is no routine development. Experts warn that the E1 plan would carve the West Bank in two, physically isolating northern and southern Palestinian regions and severing them from East Jerusalem entirely. For Palestinians on the ground, the consequences could be dire. The newly planned settlements would severely restrict Palestinian movement, making daily life even more difficult and stripping away what little territorial cohesion remains. Families could lose access to work, schools, and medical care, cementing a future of deeper division and hardship. What makes this move especially volatile is both its timing and its scale. Smotrich has gone on record boasting that the plan would bury the dream of a Palestinian state, effectively killing off any chance of a negotiated two-state solution. The blueprint calls for more than 3,400 new housing units, directly linking Ma'ale Adumim to Jerusalem. By closing this gap, Israel would choke off the geographic heart of what Palestinians hope could one day be their capital.
Germany's reaction has been unusually forceful. Der Geman-Vorn-Ministerium hat condemned den Plan outright, Städten es firmlich reliniert die israelische Regierungsansagen regarding their approval of thousands of new housing units. Berlin warnt, dass diese Aktien brechen internationales Recht und drohen der Plan für eine Zwei-Staaten-Lösung. Das ist nicht nur diplomatisches Posturing. Germany fürcht, dass wenn der E1-Plan avanced, es könnte internationale Legalnormen und den wirklichen Pfad zu Frieden schettern.
Global pressure is intensifying. The United Kingdom has slammed the plan as flagrantly illegal and insists it must be stopped now. The United Nations Secretary General has called for an immediate halt to all settlement activity, warning that these moves undermine the prospects for peace. Even the European Union has stepped in, warning that expanding settlements risks making a two-state solution impossible and could unleash even greater turmoil across the region. There is much more at risk here than just a disputed stretch of land. If this plan goes ahead, the very idea of a Palestinian state could disappear. A new cycle of violence could erupt, and the credibility of international law could be fatally weakened. The world is watching Israel's next steps, and perhaps even more closely, how Germany and its European allies will react if their warnings are ignored. But why is Germany, in particular, so invested? And what does its forceful opposition reveal about Europe's shifting role in the conflict? Let's dig deeper into Berlin's motivations. Is this the moment that buries the two-state solution for good, or the last chance to rescue it? What unfolds next could redefine not only the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but the very rules of global diplomacy. If you think this is just another policy dispute, think again. The stakes are nothing less than the survival of international law and Europe's role in world affairs. Israel is now moving forward with plans to build several thousand new settlement homes in the West Bank, a step that could fracture the region's future. Germany has taken an unusually forceful stand, warning that projects like the E1 settlement would slice the West Bank in two, cutting off Palestinian communities and, according to a German spokesperson, complicate steps towards a negotiated two-state solution and end to Israeli occupation of the West Bank. This is not just diplomatic posturing. Israel's far-right finance minister has admitted that these settlements are designed to bury any hope of a Palestinian state. Germany and the European Union have made it clear Such actions violate international law and United Nations Security Council resolutions. In an unambiguous statement, Germany's Federal Foreign Office says it firmly rejects these settlement plans and urges Israel to halt construction without delay. Should the expansion continue, the map of a potential Palestinian state risks being shredded, leaving only isolated enclaves and making a viable nation almost impossible. With each new settlement, the dream of a contiguous Palestinian state fades even further, undermining decades of peace negotiations and the diplomatic blueprint Europe has backed for generations. But the fallout stretches far beyond the Holy Land. If Israel disregards European pressure, the authority of international law takes a direct hit, and Europe's influence on the global stage weakens. Germany's public rebuke is not just about this conflict. It is a warning that if Europe loses credibility here, it could embolden defiance in other crises, eroding its ability to mediate around the world. Conversely, if Israel responds to global pressure and freezes expansion, there remains a slim but vital hope that dialogue and diplomacy might prevail. Such a step would be a rare win for multilateral action, reinforcing the idea that international consensus can still matter when the stakes are highest. Everything hangs in the balance: the feasibility of a Palestinian state, the authority of international law, and Europe's diplomatic muscle all ride on this standoff. The outcome will echo from the West Bank to major capitals across the globe. So what does this confrontation really teach us? And as these stakes become ever more urgent, what choices lie ahead for citizens and policymakers? What happens next will test the resolve of the international community. Let's examine what this means for the future, and what actions might shift the outcome. Why should you care if Europe pushes back against Israel's settlement plans? Because what happens now could change the rules for international law and directly impact your world. If Europe's voice loses weight, it sets a precedent that powerful countries can break agreements without consequence, eroding protections that keep future conflicts in check. Deutschlands letztes Response ist nicht nur mehr diplomatisches Postspielen. Für den ersten Teil in Jahren, Berlin hat öffentlich angekündigt, Israels plant Settlements in dem E1-Korridor von verletzen internationales Recht und warnt, der könnten fatal unterminen die Zwei-Staaten-Lösung. Die Stakes sind kristallklar. Diese tausende neuen Homes würden slicen die Westbank in zwei, restrikten palästinensischen Movement und potenziell kill-off jede Hoffnung für eine future-palästinensische Staat.
Still think this is just a distant dispute? When Europe's economic powerhouse draws a red line, the world watches to see if the rules are real or just empty words. If Germany's stand goes unanswered, it signals that international law can be ignored, weakening the global system that every country, including yours, relies on for security and justice.
Moments like this are tipping points. If the public tunes out, these decisions slide by unchallenged, making it easier for governments to sidestep accountability. But when people speak up, leaders are forced to explain their choices, and sometimes even change them. Remember, Germany and the European Union are not just bystanders. They are Israel's biggest trade partners, major sources of aid, and key diplomatic mediators. Their unity, or lack of it, can shape real-world policies in both Jerusalem and Ramallah. This is not just about distant geopolitics. If these settlement plans pass without pushback, it could normalize violations of international law everywhere, making it harder in the future to defend human rights and peaceful resolutions worldwide. Europe's credibility and the strength of global norms depend on whether we pay attention or look away. So what can you actually do? Stay informed. Share what you learn. Even small actions like discussing these issues or contacting your representatives can keep the pressure on. Your engagement matters a lot more than you might think. But what does this mean for the next chapter in the Israel-Palestine conflict? Let's look at what could happen next, depending on how Europe acts. Could the future of the West Bank and Middle East peace be decided right now? If these new settlements move forward,
the possibility of a Palestinian state could be lost for a generation.
Germany's blunt rejection of Israel's West Bank building plan is not just a disagreement. Berlin calls the construction of tausenden homes in the E1 corridor a breach of internationalem law, argumentieren, es würde slice die Westbank in halb und cut off East Jerusalem von palästinensischem Life.
This is no ordinary statement. Germany insists it will only accept border changes agreed by both Israelis and Palestinians, making clear that one-sided expansion wrecks any hope for a two-state solution. Now, Europe's credibility is at stake as international rules and alliances face a crucial test.
By moving to approve more than 3,400 homes in a zone designed to fragment Palestinian territory, Israel's far-right government is openly challenging the idea of a Palestinian state, something its own finance minister has described as dead. Germany, joined by the United Nations and other European nations, is drawing a clear line. Settlements that erase the future of a Palestinian state are not just divisive, they are illegal. The coming days will set the tone for Middle East diplomacy. If Germany's bold words turn into real political or economic action, Israel may be forced to reconsider. But if these warnings go unanswered, the two-state solution could slip away for good. Everyone should watch closely. The choices made now by Berlin, Jerusalem, and the world will determine whether peace has a chance and if global diplomacy means anything at all.
So what will Germany and the rest of Europe actually do next? The answer could reshape the region and set a precedent for years to come.